So if you read the abstract, you get the impression there's this really cool term named digital natives. And I made like a word of play on that one because what we really are going to talk about today is digital naives. And I'm going to show you why they're typically naive instead of native. But a bit about me. Some of you might know me from the GOTO night that I host in Copenhagen. But I'm actually a master student in advanced computing. That's a computer science degree at the IT university. I also did my bachelor's there also in computer science, but now I'm specialized in cryptography and security. I've done previous research on privacy in the current internet protocols. So somehow we ended up with this massive internet that is completely broken. And I think it's quite fun to look at that. For instance, if you search in the original paper, research paper for the internet protocol, and you search for security, you get no hits. I think that's quite fun to look at. I teach high school students about privacy and self-defense, and we're going to talk a lot about that. Just a fun fact, I occasionally blog about Amager, now that we're here. That's a little commercial. And if you read the text about me, I really like DJing also, specializing in disco, funk, and what I call baby makers. So if you find that what I talk about here is really boring, you can go read the blog or you can listen to my Spotify playlist. All right? Well, that's settled. I would like to introduce this term for those of you who hasn't heard about it before. So this is like an industry-wide, really popular, hip term to use, especially by the industry. We are catering to the digital natives or born mobile and stuff like that. And I actually think it's quite annoying that industry, they present us as these dumb teenagers, and I want to show you how. And just a quick warning, this video is incredibly cringe, but it gets the point across that digital natives may be naive instead. So let's hit it up.
So, I'm not a techie, but if there's one thing I know well, it's my phone. It's not just about making calls, it's about serious stuff like texting and liking and Skyping and, of course, personalizing. I have a lot of friends, and I need to let them know what's up with me, because if I'm not posting, then it's like I don't even exist.
Like a crazy lady. Yeah, so you get it. It's like incredibly cringe, and nobody really talks that way. I don't know how this became a keynote at some conference. Apparently it did. They tried to make some... Oh, sorry. Let me just stop right there. Cool. So digital natives are really just quick at adapting to new technology, and they trust technology. They think technology is the answer for everything. It might be, but they don't have any critical sense of what technology can do. If they have a problem, there's an app for that. So they don't question these media. They don't question, for instance, the term free, which we're also going to talk about. And the most important thing, I think, is that we actually perceive them as experts. And we perceive them by their parents and other adults, they're expert in using technology. And I want to call this the farmor effect. So I want to read this text to you, to those of you who are not a native Danish speaker. So this is a text from Grandma, and it says, "Honey, what was it, the apps you told me to download?" And she spelled apps like that. Then she goes on, "Oh, it was something about," and that's Facebook, and that's Snapchat, became Snapshots. I can't remember, I'm sorry. And then in the end, was it Instagram or something like Instagram? So it's clear here that Grandma texted her granddaughter to see, or it wasn't me, unfortunately, but this could have been me. So can we really teach them anything? Because we clearly perceive them as experts, but they're not. And lastly, they're teenagers. They're born in the zeros, I think that's the correct term. And there are different characteristics that we usually use to describe teenagers that are really good in this sense as well, to describe what is a digital naive. And I want to start by the first one, financially irresponsible. That goes for digital naives as well, and I want to tell you why. Because they automatically think that everything is free. If you pay for an app, you're a moron. If you pay for software, you're stupid. If you have to remove a virus, everybody knows you use a free virus remover. You can just click on that Max Saver icon when you go to pages. That's totally cool. And if you pay for software, you're basically just out. And I can understand why they think this. So if you look at the top 11 of popular free apps in the app stores, these are major companies. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, major companies, really valuable companies. And they don't question why these apps are free when the companies is so valuable. How come that? They're like, oh, Mark Zuckerberg is just a nice guy and he made this really cool app, let's use it. They don't question how they make the money. And when you ask them, how do you think Facebook makes its money? They say, oh yeah, that's right, there's an advertisement out in the side. I know that, they make money off that. And then you ask them, okay, that's correct, but why do you think so many people want to advertise on Facebook? Oh, there's a lot of people there. And it's like, yes, I know, but a lot of people process a lot of data, and that's the data that you put in the platform that actually makes Facebook and Snapchat, for instance, a really valuable company. Okay, so teenagers are perceived as lazy. And my example here may apply to all of us because you know about the terms and conditions. Nobody reads the terms and conditions. Let me just see a raise of hands. How many in here have Snapchat? Cool. All right. It's a good idea sometimes to read these terms and conditions, but I know they're long. Snapchat, for instance, have 52 pages of like tiny font-sized papers. Nobody likes to read them. We all just click accept. And then you try to solve it. For instance, with the cookies in the European Union, you try to solve it by telling the users that they're visiting a website with cookies employed, but you do it in a horrible way where everybody just gets annoyed by that pop-up instead, and it solves like nothing. So after the European Union introduced this pop-up, and I asked out in the high school students, how many of you know what a cookie is? Nobody knows what a cookie is. So that's obviously, that's a solution that didn't work. But back to Snapchat and terms of conditions. Because I actually think it's important that there are a couple of you guys who use Snapchat, and I want to read out loud what you actually said yes to. So, for all services, you grant Snapchat a worldwide royalty-free, sub-licensable, and transferable license to host, store, use, display, reproduce, modify, adapt, edit, publish, and distribute that content. Because live, local, and any other crowdsourced services are inherently public and chronicle matters of public interest, the license you grant us for content submitted to the services is broader. In addition to the rights you grant us in connection with other services, you also grant us a perpetual license to create derivative works from, promote, exhibit, broadcast, syndicate, publicly perform, and publicly display content. And then they go on, and then in the end it's like unrestricted, worldwide, perpetual right to use your name, your likeness, and your voice. Do you think teenage high school students know this? No, they don't. And when you tell them this, they instantly panic. I had one guy who was like jumping out the window. It was on the first floor, so it was just for fun. But they were really scared that this is actually what they said yes to. And I understand the problem. Nobody wants to read these terms and conditions. So it's a fair question, like, why do we as service providers keep writing these long terms and conditions? We'll get back to that. They're gullible. They think the world is beautiful, everyone is a nice guy. As I said, Mark Zuckerberg is still just running Facebook on his one computer from Harvard. He still hasn't graduated. Well, that's true, but the rest of it, not so much. And my example here is these Facebook apps. So whenever you use Facebook to connect your app for creating a user, and as a developer, you probably know the API to this one. You can get access to data points from different users' profile, for instance, profile picture or age, and I mean, sometimes it's really fair what you ask the users for. And whenever your app is being used this way, that the user has connected with Facebook, the app goes in their Facebook page. Under settings, 6-click in on the settings on a page where the page is white but the text is gray and it's really hard to find, but I show them, so now you know that maybe some teenager will go in here and find out what you did. But I have one example of how this works, and I think this is really exciting. I don't want to say too much because I want to make a quiz of it. Cool. So I want to show you how this works. How I use the video editing tool iMovie, for instance, to connect to my Facebook. So it is like super simple. Just to show you that this app is not on my Facebook to begin with, I just show you that. There's no iMovie. We agreed to that. I have not cheated. Then I go back to iMovie. I connect my Facebook. I choose share, then Facebook, and then obviously it tells me, please sign in. I will sign in. Now I will give you my email address, and you can guess how long my password is. That is great security. But it's for the sake of this talk. So I log in, no problem. And then I was actually smart enough, or mainly just sweet, to tell me exactly which data point from my profile they would like. That sounds reasonable. Maybe email address is a little bit too much, but I mean, public profile and email, that sound fine. I want to ask you at this point, how many data points do you think that iMovie will get from my profile? It's an easy question, you just saw it. 2? Yeah, so we all agreed that 2, my public profile and email address, that was the only thing they asked for. So let's continue this video, we'll see if we guessed right. Then it asked me, would you like to share? Nobody wants to share on the Facebook, it's like really annoying. So I'm like double checking only me and then not now, just in case that they override my decision. Looks fine. I go back to Facebook just to show you that now the app is there. And I just want to make sure that it's only the 2 data points that I actually gave them that they now have access to. And I have slow internet at home, I'm sorry. So now I click in the app. And I can see exactly which data points they actually have from my profile. And the list is quite long, especially more than 2 points. It's much more than my email address and my public profile. And I think this must be illegal. I think so. And I think it's like crazy that Facebook is allowed to do this. But just to work you through what they actually asked me about, public profile, relationships, interest, date of birth, chat status, notes, work history, status updates, education history, events, groups, hometown interest. Oh, there's one more. Photos, religious and political views, videos, website, personal description, likes, email addresses. Oh, that's right, I gave them my email address. That's right, that must be there. Friend list, my friends' relationships interest, my friend's birthday, my friend's chat statuses, my friend's note, and your friend's work history. That is insane. Oh, there's one more. Your friend's status updates, your friend's education history, your friend's events, your friend's groups, your friend's hometowns, your friend's interests, your friend's current cities, your friend's photos, your friend's religious and political views, your friend's videos, your friend's website, your friend's personal description, your friend's likes. I promise you it ends now, but do you really wonder why teenagers might develop trust issues? I don't. So I really believe that we can teach them something. And I really think we should. Oh, I left my water there. Can I get the water? So after all this reading, I'm like, nope, this one. Yeah, good. That took a lot of reading. It's like 52 points. That's a long way from 2 to 52. All right. So what can we teach them? Well, really, we should just teach them what we teach them every day. If you're not paying, you may be the product that is sold. That was clear both from the terms and conditions from Snapchat. It was also clear from the iMovie, right? So we may teach them a different definition of free. If something is free, you have to question why. Is this free? Am I paying with something else, just not money? We have to teach them that if terms and conditions are super long, you should read them. You should read them because if something is really tedious and so boring and stuff, it's like because they hide something for you. That's obvious, right? You can tell a teenager, everybody understands this. If you want something to be hidden, you put it somewhere really obscure. I think everyone can understand this. Never believe what strangers on the internet tell you, not even Apple. They may be lying or may be hiding something for you. And then lastly, use protection. That is not just in real life also. We also have to teach them that, but also on the internet. But how can we teach them? I mean, we're software developers. We're developing software to these digital natives. Do you still believe they're natives? No, me neither. So to get back to the second part of this talk, I want to talk about this privacy in software. How can we actually develop software that helps these digital natives become natives and help them develop a standard of what is free? Should I question software? Should I just instantly just trust technology? Maybe not. And I want to start out by asking you a question. Do you think security is the same as privacy? Because I don't. And I want to give you an example. So HTTP and just HTTPS, sorry, is just a quick reclaimer here that there may be a talk in the afternoon where someone proved me wrong what I'm about to say. I just want to disclaim that for anyone saying, oh, she was lying. But no, right now you just know that HTTPS is secure. So I use my phone, use HTTPS to encrypt the message from my device to Facebook servers. And that means, sure, it gets along quite secure. Actually, Facebook always also use something called certificate pinning. That means it's resistant to man-in-the-middle attacks. Pretty cool. I tried to hack it myself during my bachelor thesis. Didn't work. So that's how I know. But when my message is at Facebook server, it's not encrypted. That means that anyone with this access to the server can go in and read my messages. It's basically just like a postcard. So I don't think that's private. So this is an example of something that's secure, but maybe we should find another definition for private. Because when I stand here and there's a distance between you and me, I mean, there's a reason why you didn't sit right next to the guy you don't know. There's always like a seat in the middle, like, oh no, go away, I don't know you guy. And that's because privacy is like a social concept, right? We have this sphere that we want to be in. And if I really go close to your face and yell, you're like, oh, what a bitch. Because we derive this from like social concepts. So I spent some time during my research to look into concept from sociology. Anyway, you get the point. And the first one is informational inequality. So we should think about creating a balance between our software and our users. Our users should be allowed to know which data do we have on them, or what data do we have on them. That also means process data, so data you're in possession of because you process some other data that becomes metadata. I only think it's fair that users know what you actually know about them. And that's understood as informational inequality, or equality in this case. If you have an equal balance and they can go in and see, okay, what data do they actually have, and can retrieve it again, then that's a fair balance. Another one is informational injustice. So when I had to present this, I was doing it to my teacher who had like supervised my project, and I thought, okay, this guy is a professor in IT security. If there's someone who's really cool at IT security and Facebook and all the social media, that must be him. He was on Facebook, and his profile was not closed. So I went in, and I thought, cool, there's some pictures there. That's awesome. I may be able to use this at the exam. So what I did at the exam was actually to bring up this slide, and then the next slide, I won't show you here because obviously that would be unfair. I just took his vacation photos in the next slide. And he was like, how had you gotten this? And he was like really perplexed, and I was like, no, I'm just explaining you informational injustice. Because informational injustice is about when you use something that was created in one sphere in another one. That feels quite unfair. Because nobody likes a snitch. Fortunately, my professor thought it was funny and didn't expel me, so that was good. But it really gave him the sense of what informational injustice is. And just to show you, do not use information that you've created in one sphere in another. For instance, cookies. When you tell these horrible teenagers about cookies, they'd be like, oh, I thought it was random that I just got the shoes that I was just looking at. Ho, ho, ho. And you're like, no, that's not random. It's technology. Cool. Okay, informational decay. So this is really important for me because I've been a digital naive. Luckily, Facebook only came around when I was 15 and not 12, when I was like, oh, I need to have a blog and tell everyone about it and upload photos of me. And gosh, I'm so glad that doesn't exist today. But that wouldn't have happened if I was just born 4 years earlier. Because we have a tendency to always save data just because we can. And I want to ask you, why do you save this? And someone says, oh, it was on sale. Because this is the hard drive cost of memory. And I get that, but it's not an excuse to save data. Because I actually think that we really do owe it to our teenagers to allow them and allow computers to forget. Because when they grow up and realize, okay, maybe I wasn't really affiliated with this political party that I said I was, and I want to change that, and then a future employee Googles them and says, oh gosh, he's a communist, we can't use him. As most teenagers are, really. Then I think it's fair that we allow computers to forget this. And just to sum up about this decay, maybe our current standards are really privacy preserving. So right now, the standard is to remember everything. Everything. And I think one way to circumvent this is to let users actually have a timeout. So if I could upload a photo to Facebook and say, hey, Facebook, I think this photo is really cool, but can you delete it, like delete it and not just tag it as delete in your database? Can you delete this photo in a month? Or I could post something on my blog and be like, oh, I can't do that if it's my blog. If it wasn't my server, I could just implement something where a user could set a timeout, like make this go away for 2 years, in 2 years' time. Maybe there are some photos that I would like to use forever, family photos, so let's keep them forever. But actually just giving the users some control over what data and how that data is being stored, I think is a great help. Also because then you force users to question themselves. Well, do I really think this data is relevant in 2 years' time? Maybe not. Maybe it would be fine that the drunk photos I put on Facebook Friday night are not there Monday morning, because then I would be confronted with it. Also, about the terms and conditions, we need to do something about this. So I know that terms and conditions are often long, because you want to protect yourself from those crazy Americans who are going to sue you just because they can. I understand that, and you need a lawyer for that. But again, if you really need a lawyer to make your terms and conditions, maybe they're already too complicated. I haven't yet read some terms and conditions who are like 3 bullet points, but I think that would be awesome. If we go back to Snapchat, oh, let's not go back. But I really think that if Snapchat just was like, hey, you know what, we can do anything with your data. Do you think that's okay? I think most of us would go back and be like, no, I don't think that. But it's like, it's obscured in this massive text document. I feel so sorry for the guy who had to write it. It's horrible. Like he must have used the word like synonyms so much. Yes. So another standard is ask for forgiveness, not permission. So you saw it in the iMovie example, right? They just have all this data because it would be so awkward to ask afterwards, oh, hey, we also need your friend's photos, and we also need your friend's relationships interest. It's a video editing program. I feel like this is horrendous. But they ask for forgiveness, not permission. What if it was the other way around? That we would actually start asking for permission first, not forgiveness. So don't ask for data you don't need. And then, like a side note, because I'm into cryptography, if you really need to save the data, can you save it encrypted? So these are the points that I wanted to get across. And I totally lost track of time. Maybe I'm too early, but actually that was all I wanted to say for today. Thank you.
We have time for some questions. I have a few questions on the from the app.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I actually have quite a few questions. Yeah.
Are you really
So
just looking at Facebook, or are you really in the app?
I am really in the app. Sorry.
Okay.
Would you believe Facebook if they let you set a timer?
No.
Okay.
So, no, definitely not. I don't know if you've seen the documentary about this Austrian guy, can't remember his name, Max Reiber, something like that. So he asked data and he actually he asked Facebook and he actually sued Facebook in order to get all the data that they have on him. And what he realized was that the photos that he had deleted were still there. They were just tagged as deleted in the Facebook database. I mean, how can we ever trust something again? I think it's horrible. So no, definitely not. But if I were developing an app and I asked you, so you know, there's this feature where you can set timeout on the things that you submit to my app, I mean, I would do it. It's just Facebook being a horrible person.
Left here. Do you think paid services would work as an alternative for Facebook or and Snapchat business models?
Yes, I do. So I base that on data that I've collected from these high school students. I know that I really paint this caricatured picture of a teenager who's really dumb and annoying, but most of them are actually nice people. So when you ask them, so what we do is that we divide the number of active users that are currently on Facebook. That's around 2 billion. And by active, Facebook mean active once a month. I don't know if that's active, but they define it like that. And then you take the cost of running Facebook and you divide it out by these 2 billion users. And Facebook actually only costs 7.5 kroners, so that's €1 a month if you do that. And if you ask then teenagers, would you pay this? They would be like, yeah, that's cool. And if you ask them, would you pay more? I mean, Spotify is what, 20 euros, something like that, 100 kroners, and they gladly pay that. So yeah, I definitely think that it's just because they're getting so used to the alternative that everything is free, and maybe we should teach them that differently.
All right. There's another great question here. So, is it so bad? Yes, they have our data and information, but if it's giving me the shoes I want and relevant content, isn't it okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to people. I'm a privacy fanatic, and I've totally closed down everything, but I'm still on Facebook and I still use Snapchat. But I try to protect my online presence. But the problem is that we don't actually give teenagers the choice. We don't present them with, do you know what? Your data is actually being saved. We just do it and assume they're okay with it. Again, we just asked for forgiveness when they found out, but we didn't ask for permission. And I think this is not fair. That's not okay, that we just assume that everyone is fine with the data laying everywhere, because teenagers clearly aren't. When I'm out teaching them, they're clearly like, oh, I have to jump out the window. Yeah.
All right, just a quick follow-up on that maybe. Haven't you experienced someone just saying back to you when you explain how
sure.
loose
but
the
then
data is handled, that, okay, I have nothing to hide?
Yeah, they say that a lot,
yeah.
but then I ask for the Facebook password and then they suddenly quiet. Yeah. So
okay.
I found a way out around that.
Okay, cool. So another very interesting question. What is the stupidest question you ever heard from a high school student?
I have to think about this one.
Okay. We
okay.
can come back to that.
No, I think I have to. So I know we have the machine learning track on Tuesday, but this is kind of a machine learning joke. So there was this one guy, and we were summing up And he was like, oh, he was like one of the guys, oh, you can have everything. And then I was like really annoyed at this guy. And then we were summing up, and he said, oh, I heard about this guy with a computer in the US called Big Data. So basically he thought that Big Data was just one computer in the US. He didn't get that that was a concept of things. He was like, oh, it's like one computer in the US, it's scary. So, I mean, yes, it is a lot of computers in the US, but gosh, I couldn't even go into that discussion. So I think that's what I can tag on the top of my mind.
All right, right. So another question, do you always read the terms and conditions yourself?
Never.
So you
No,
basically
now
admit to the
no,
mistakes?
but that's a fair point. I don't want to spend a weekend just because I want to download some cool app. But what I want to come across here, and that's the point I'm trying to make, that us that is making this software, who are writing these terms and conditions, we should think again if we're doing the right thing. If we're doing right by writing terms and conditions that, I mean, one metric you could do is like ask everyone in the office to read the terms and conditions over the weekend, then on Monday morning ask them how many of you have read it. If no one or just one guy hasn't, they're too long and they're too complicated. So that's a metric you can use, for instance. But nobody wants to read them.
Okay,
Yeah.
so another question from the app?
That's a lot of questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. How do you think all the cool stuff like machine learning can be applied without users' data?
Yeah, and that's a constant discussion I have with my boyfriend, who's a data scientist, and we're like, oh, that's the number one discussion we have. But I mean, it's hard, right? But we could ask ourselves, I mean, that's also the point, right? You should gather data that is useful. And I mean, if iMovie told me, oh, it's really useful for us to know your friend's relationship status, I would be like, yeah, no, that's not relevant for a video editing program. But of course, if you're scanning photos, figuring out are teenagers generally depressed or something else, you can do some beautiful research by applying machine learning to big data sets. And of course, it's also a gift that we have this data, because then we can do things and we can learn things that we were not able to before. But personally, I think that the beauty of machine learning lies in, for instance, scanning brain scans to find tumors and stuff. So maybe not to scan for specific shoe preferences. I mean, is that saving the world? I don't know.
Cool.
That was it.
So do we have any questions in the audience? Yeah. One second, get the mic.
Uh-oh, I know this guy.
I actually was the one asking the machine learning thing.
Oh,
and the
yeah.
follow-up about the same thing. Do you think the problem is in collecting data or in putting a name on that data? Because for me, I don't think the problem if it's machine doing the interpretation, because actually, even if you make the same analogy of our social life into machines, you actually also used some data that you gathered from your high school students.
Yeah.
To make this awesome presentation. So I think the machine also can use some of the users' data to create some content or to give you some information or to ask you
Yeah.
for
So
propose something.
yeah,
But
sure.
is it putting the name into the data that is wrong, or collecting the data itself?
I would say that the name is the trouble, but then again, I know how easy it is to break anonymized data. So I don't know. Yeah, I think maybe we should just go away from that. That the default is saving everything. Really. I mean, you could save something that you think is relevant for the app you're building or the company you work at, or something that you truly think can also enhance the experience for the users, right? And not just for you getting your money worth, right? So just think about it. I don't say I have the key to everything, but this is like my experience with teenagers so far.
Cool. Any more questions in the audience? Yeah, 1 second.
And I don't know this guy, so.
Have you ever stopped using an application just because of the terms and conditions?
Yes, I stopped using Snapchat.
Okay, because you said you're around social media and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still on Facebook, but now I never, ever connect an app with Facebook. I will always use my own email address and just some random password. Not a random password, really. strong password. So yeah, I stopped using Snapchat because I'm not saying that they do it. They're just allowed to. And if you follow around the stock marketing market, you know that Snapchat just came on the market. They just IPO'd, and they haven't made any money so far, any money. And this is what they can do with your data. So if I end up in a commercial for chlamydia, I think that's horrible, but that's what they're allowed to. I don't know who would make a commercial for chlamydia, but you never know. You never know. The internet is a crazy place filled with crazy people.
All right. Any more questions? No. I actually have a question. What's your take on biometric authentication? Apple just came out with the
Yes,
this
and you know
Face
how I
ID.
feel about Apple now. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool, and I think it's fine if Apple can promise me that my face is only going to be on my phone. So I think that's cool. If you just promise users and you keep your promise and you do it to keep the data on the phone, then I think it's cool. But of course, if the government suddenly said, "Oh, Emma, you know what? Just to get in the library, you have to show your thumb," I would be like, "What?" Because then there's a whole other discussion. Is it the governments or is it just Facebook or Snapchat and these social media? And so it's a cool feature, but as always, be careful and just think about it. I really think. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And